Welcome to tonight's journey through the most mind-bending paradoxes in philosophy, mathematics, and logic. As we explore these puzzling contradictions, let your mind wander through the mysteries that have challenged thinkers for centuries. The gentle confusion might just be the perfect lullaby for your overactive brain. Let's begin our paradoxical adventure. Liar's paradox. Imagine a simple statement. This sentence is false. If it's true, then it must be false. But if it's false, then it must be true. This infinite loop of contradiction has puzzled philosophers since ancient Greece. As Epimenides, a Cretan, once said, "All Cretans are liars. If he's telling the truth, he's lying. If he's lying, he might be telling the truth." Feel your thoughts begin to circle as we move to our next paradox. Crocodile paradox. In ancient Egypt, a crocodile steals a child and promises the father, "I will return your child if and only if you correctly guess whether I will return your child or not." If the father guesses, "You will return my child," the crocodile cannot both return and not return the child. If the father guesses, "You will not return my child," the crocodile faces the same contradiction. As this impossible situation washes over you, notice how your thoughts begin to slow. Ship of Theseus. Imagine a ship where, over time, every single wooden part is gradually replaced. Once all original parts are gone, is it still the same ship? Now imagine those removed original parts are used to build another ship. Which vessel is the true ship of Theseus? As your mind gently contemplates the nature of identity and persistence, allow your thoughts to drift further. Sorites. Paradox. One grain of sand is not a heap. Add one grain, and you still don't have a heap. Keep adding single grains. At what precise point does it become a heap? There seems to be no specific grain that transforms not a heap into a heap, yet heaps exist. This vagueness paradox applies to many concepts: baldness, tallness, richness. As the boundaries blur between categories, let your alertness similarly fade. Unexpected hanging paradox. A judge tells a prisoner, "You will be hanged at noon on one of the days of this week, but you will not know which day until you are informed on the morning of the hanging." The prisoner reasons it cannot be Sunday, as by Saturday night he would know. But then it cannot be Saturday either, by the same logic. Working backward, he concludes it cannot happen at all. Yet, when he's hanged on Wednesday, the surprise is genuine. Feel how expectations can unravel logic as your own thoughts begin to untether. Grandfather paradox. If you traveled back in time and prevented your grandfather from meeting your grandmother, you would never be born. But if you were never born, you couldn't travel back in time to prevent their meeting. Your existence and non-existence are paradoxically linked, creating a temporal loop with no beginning or end. Allow your thoughts to curve back on themselves as the boundaries of time dissolve. Bootstrap paradox. Imagine you find a book containing a beautiful song. Years later, you travel back in time and share the song with a struggling musician who publishes it and becomes famous. That musician's songbook is the very one you found years before. Who composed the song? Information seems to exist in a loop with no origin. As you ponder this causality puzzle, notice how your own thoughts begin to circle. Raven paradox. All ravens are black is logically equivalent to all non-black things are non-ravens. This means observing a white shoe adds evidence to the hypothesis that all ravens are black. But how can observing objects that aren't ravens tell us anything about ravens? As the boundaries between relevant and irrelevant evidence blur, allow your mind to soften its grip on certainty. Ross paradox. If you ought to mail a letter, then you ought to either mail it or burn it. But if you burn the letter, you've fulfilled half of your obligation while violating your original duty. This demonstrates how introducing irrelevant alternatives can lead to illogical conclusions. As your mind contemplates these strange implications, feel how absolutes begin to waver. Temperature paradox. If you drop a hot stone into cold water, heat transfers until both reach equilibrium. But at every moment, the stone and water have different temperatures. When exactly do they reach the same temperature? There must be a first moment when they're equal, but before that moment, the stone is warmer. How does the stone know when to match exactly? As you ponder the continuous nature of change, feel your consciousness gradually shifting states. Barbershop paradox. Consider a barber who shaves all those who do not shave themselves. Does the barber shave himself? If he does, then he doesn't, since he only shaves those who don't shave themselves. If he doesn't, then he does, by the same rule. This self-referential loop shows how certain definitions create inherent contradictions. Let your thoughts gently circle as you drift further. Catch-22. Inspired by Joseph Heller's novel, A Catch-22 is a paradoxical situation from which you cannot escape because of contradictory rules. Military pilots could be excused from missions if they were insane, but requesting to be excused proved they were sane enough to fly. This circular trap demonstrates how systems can create impossible situations. As your mind processes these constraints, feel how resistance gives way to acceptance. Paradox of free choice. If you can do something, you can choose to do it. This implies that if you can sing, you can choose to sing. But what about involuntary actions like breathing? You can breathe, but can you always choose to breathe? This reveals the complicated relationship between ability, choice, and control. As these distinctions blur, allow your conscious control to gently recede. Drinker's paradox. In any bar, there exists at least one person such that if that person is drinking, then everyone in the bar is drinking. This seems impossible, but logically, if everyone is drinking, then anyone satisfies the condition. If someone isn't drinking, then any drinker can be chosen to satisfy it. This demonstration of vacuous truth shows how logical statements can be true in unexpected ways. Feel your analytical mind beginning to release. Tortoise paradox. Zeno's paradox tells us that Achilles can never overtake a tortoise given a head start. Before reaching the tortoise, Achilles must reach the halfway point, then half of the remaining distance, and so on infinitely. Though we know overtaking happens in reality, the infinite series of smaller steps suggests otherwise. As you consider how infinity fits within finite time, feel your thoughts slowing with each mental division. Paradox of entailment. In classical logic, a false statement implies any statement. So, if the moon is made of cheese, then Paris is the capital of France, is technically true. This means from a contradiction, anything follows, a principle called explosion. As your mind contemplates how falsity can lead to arbitrary truth, notice how certainties become increasingly fluid. Lottery paradox. For a lottery with millions of tickets, it's rational to believe that any specific ticket will lose. But if you believe every ticket will lose, you must believe no ticket will win, which contradicts the knowledge that one will. This shows how rational beliefs don't always combine to form rational conclusions. As your thoughts navigate this probability maze, feel certainty gently dissolving. Munchausen. Trilemma. Any attempt to prove something must rely on justification that itself needs justification, leading to three unsatisfactory options: infinite regress, circular reasoning, or unproven assumptions. This suggests all knowledge ultimately rests on unprovable foundations. As you contemplate the limits of certainty, Allow your need for perfect understanding to fade. Hilbert's hotel paradox. Imagine an infinite hotel with no vacancies. A new guest arrives, so the manager moves each guest to the next room. Guest 1 to room 2, guest 2 to room 3, etc., creating a vacancy in room 1. This shows how infinity behaves differently than finite numbers, allowing seemingly impossible accommodations. As your mind stretches to hold this concept, feel how ordinary constraints begin to dissolve. Paradox of the court. A law student agrees to pay his teacher after winning his first case. When the student refuses to practice law, the teacher sues him. If the student wins, he doesn't have to pay by the court's ruling. If he loses, he doesn't have to pay by their agreement. This perfect logical trap demonstrates how even airtight agreements can contain contradictions. Let your thoughts circle this puzzle as they gradually slow. Ellsberg paradox. Given an urn with 30 red balls and 60 balls that are either black or yellow, most people prefer betting on drawing red over black, and also prefer betting on drawing either black or yellow over either red or yellow. This violates expected utility theory, showing how uncertainty affects decision-making differently than risk. As you consider how ambiguity shapes your choices, notice your thoughts becoming increasingly distant. Paradox of the preface. An author believes each statement in their book is true, yet acknowledges in the preface that the book probably contains errors. This seems contradictory. Believing all statements while also believing at least one is false. It demonstrates how practical rationality sometimes requires holding inconsistent beliefs. As you contemplate this practical contradiction, feel your grip on perfect consistency loosening. 2. Envelope paradox. You're given 2 envelopes containing money. One has twice as much as the other. You pick one, then consider switching. Since the other envelope has either double or half your current amount, the expected value of switching seems higher. But this applies regardless of which envelope you choose first, creating an endless switching loop. As your mind traces this circular reasoning, feel your thoughts gently turning inward. Simpson's paradox. A statistical phenomenon where a trend appears in separate groups but disappears or reverses when combined. A medicine might seem effective for both men and women separately, yet appear harmful when data is pooled. This reveals how aggregate statistics can mislead us about underlying patterns. As you consider how truth can hide within perspectives, feel your analytical mind gradually releasing. Friendship paradox. On average, your friends have more friends than you do. This statistical truth occurs because people with many friends appear in more friendship lists, skewing the average. It demonstrates how social networks create surprising mathematical properties that contradict our intuition. As you ponder this social mathematics, feel your awareness of separateness beginning to fade. Inspection. Paradox. If you randomly observe buses arriving at a stop, you're more likely to witness longer than average waiting times. This occurs because longer intervals between buses create more opportunities for random observation. It shows how sampling methods can systematically distort our perception of average experiences. As your thoughts consider this observational bias, notice how time perception begins to shift. Lindley's paradox. A situation where frequentist and Bayesian statistical analyses of the same data lead to opposing conclusions. What one framework sees as significant evidence, the other sees as insufficient. This demonstrates how our choice of analytical method fundamentally shapes what we consider true. As you contemplate these alternative frameworks, feel the rigid boundaries between perspectives softening. Low birth weight. Paradox. Among babies with low birth weight, Those born to smoking mothers have better survival rates than those born to non-smoking mothers. This occurs because smoking causes both low birth weight and other complications. When a non-smoker's baby has low weight, it often indicates more serious problems. As you consider how causality creates unexpected patterns, allow your linear thinking to gradually unwind. Will Rogers paradox. When the Okies left Oklahoma and moved to California, they raised the average intelligence in both states. This humorous observation illustrates how moving elements between groups can improve both groups' averages simultaneously. It shows how statistical measures depend crucially on how we define categories. As these category boundaries blur in your mind, feel how distinctions begin to dissolve. Abelson's paradox. Even very strong statistical correlations may explain surprisingly little variance and have minimal practical importance. A medicine might reliably outperform a placebo, yet improve symptoms by only a tiny percentage. This gap between statistical and practical significance reveals how numbers can mislead about real-world impact. As you consider this disconnect, feel how concrete concerns begin to fade. Accuracy paradox. In predictive analytics, a model that always predicts the majority outcome can be more accurate than a model that makes more nuanced predictions, especially with imbalanced data. This shows how optimization for accuracy alone can lead to models that miss the very insights we seek. As you contemplate this measurement problem, notice how goals and metrics become increasingly abstract. Berkson's paradox. Variables that are independent can appear negatively correlated when sampling from a restricted population. Among hospital patients, having one disease might seem protective against another, simply because people with neither disease aren't in the hospital. This selection bias demonstrates how context shapes apparent relationships. As you consider these hidden influences, feel your perspective gradually widening. Freedman's paradox. When analyzing data with many variables, selecting those that show significant relationships and then testing only those relationships will find significant patterns even in random noise. This statistical illusion reveals how our search for patterns can manufacture false discoveries. As you contemplate how meaning can emerge from randomness, feel your need for certainty gradually releasing. Proebsting's paradox. A betting system that seems to guarantee profit actually leads to ruin. By continuously doubling down on mispriced bets, a gambler appears mathematically certain to win, yet inevitably loses everything. This demonstrates how expected value calculations can hide catastrophic risks. As your mind follows this path to an unexpected conclusion, notice how certainties become increasingly tenuous. Sleeping Beauty problem. Sleeping Beauty participates in an experiment where she's put to sleep, then awakened either once or twice depending on a coin flip. When awakened, should she believe the probability of heads is 1/2 or 1/3? Credible arguments exist for both answers, demonstrating how probability depends on perspective and information relevance. As you drift between these viewpoints, feel your attachment to a single truth beginning to dissolve. 3 prisoners. Problem. 3 prisoners, A, B, and C, learn that one will be pardoned while 2 will be executed. The guard tells A privately that B will be executed. Should this change A's estimated survival probability? Intuition suggests yes, but proper calculation shows no change, revealing how conditional probability challenges our natural reasoning. As your mind navigates this probabilistic maze, feel your thoughts becoming increasingly weightless. Bertrand's box paradox. 3 identical boxes contain 2 gold coins, 2 silver coins, or 1 of each. After randomly selecting a box and drawing 1 gold coin, what's the probability the other coin is also gold? Intuition suggests 1/2, but the correct answer is 2/3, showing how easily conditional probability can mislead us. As you reconsider this probabilistic puzzle, notice how certainties continue to shift. Bertrand's paradox. If you randomly select a chord in a circle, what's the probability it's longer than the side of an inscribed equilateral triangle? Different valid methods of random selection yield different answers: 1/2, 1/3, or 1/4, revealing how undefined randomness leads to contradictory results. As you contemplate these multiple truths, feel how your singular perspective gradually expands. False positive paradox. A highly accurate medical test for a rare disease will yield mostly false positives. Even with 99% accuracy, if only 1 in 10,000 people has the disease, most positive results will be incorrect. This counterintuitive result shows how base rates dramatically affect interpretation of evidence. As your mind adjusts to this probabilistic reality, feel how initial impressions gently dissolve. Intransitive dice paradox. It's possible to have 4 dice, A, B, C, and D, where A tends to beat B, B tends to beat C, C tends to beat D, yet D tends to beat A. This circular dominance pattern contradicts our assumption that better than must be transitive. As you visualize this circular relationship, allow your linear thinking to curve back upon itself. Ant on a rubber rope paradox. An ant walks along a stretching rubber band at 1 centimeter per minute, starting at one end. If the band initially measures 10 centimeters and stretches at 10 centimeters per minute, will the ant ever reach the other end? Surprisingly, yes, revealing how careful analysis of relative rates can lead to unexpected conclusions about seemingly impossible journeys. As you follow this determined ant, feel your own thoughts slowing their pace. Necktie paradox. When 2 people each believe their tie is worse than the other's, trading ties makes both happier, creating value from nothing. This demonstrates how subjective valuations can create mutual benefit through simple exchange, a foundation of economic theory. As you contemplate this emergence of value, feel your awareness of the material world gradually fading as sleep begins to embrace you. All horses are the same color. Imagine a mathematical induction proof gone wonderfully wrong. We begin with a simple premise. In a set containing just 1 horse, all horses are the same color. Now, assume that in any set of n horses, all horses are the same color. What about n plus 1 horses? Take the first n horses. They must be the same color. Then take the last n horses. They too must be the same color. Since these sets overlap, all n plus 1 horses must be the same color. By induction, all horses in the world must be the same color. The flaw lies in the transition from 1 to 2 horses, where the sets don't properly overlap. As you contemplate how perfect logical steps can lead to absurd conclusions, feel your analytical mind gently unwinding. Cramer's paradox. In number theory, Cramer observed that the gap between consecutive prime numbers seems to grow roughly as the logarithm of the numbers, yet this suggests there should be infinitely many pairs of primes differing by only 2, twin primes. However, another model implies twin primes must eventually end. Both models are mathematically sound, yet they contradict each other about the infinite behavior of these mysterious numbers. As you ponder how mathematical models can diverge when extended to infinity, allow your thoughts to drift into increasingly abstract realms. Elevator paradox. In a building with many floors, people often perceive that elevator wait times are longer going down than going up, even when the elevators move randomly. This occurs because when an elevator stops at your floor, it's more likely to be traveling in the direction most people are going, creating longer waits for those going the opposite way. This demonstrates how shared patterns of behavior create asymmetrical experiences within symmetric systems. As your mind explores these emergent patterns, notice how your perception of time begins to float free from its moorings. Newcomb's paradox. An infallible predictor offers you two boxes. Box A contains either $1 million or nothing. Box B contains $1,000. You can take both boxes or just box A. However, if the predictor foresees you taking both, they put nothing in box A. If they foresee you taking only box A, they put $1 million in it. What should you choose? Dominance reasoning suggests both boxes, since you get more money regardless of what's in box A. Causal reasoning suggests just box A, since that causes the predictor to have placed money there. Both arguments seem valid, but yield contradictory results. As you weigh these competing logics, feel the boundaries between choice and destiny gradually dissolving. Interesting number. Paradox. Consider the concept of interesting numbers. The statement, "the smallest uninteresting number," creates an immediate paradox. Being the smallest uninteresting number makes that number inherently interesting. This playful paradox reveals how the very act of classification can transform the objects being classified. As you contemplate this self-referential loop, notice how your thoughts about thoughts create similar ripples of awareness that gradually soften into tranquility. Potato paradox. If you have 100 pounds of potatoes that are 99% water by weight, and they dehydrate until they're 98% water, how much do they weigh now? Intuition suggests 99 pounds, but the correct answer is just 50 pounds. This occurs because the solid 1%, 1 pound, remains unchanged, while the water content must become 49 pounds, 98% of the new total. This demonstrates how percentages can dramatically mislead our intuition about changes in composition. As you mentally verify this surprising result, feel how certainties about the physical world begin to gently fade. Banach-Tarski paradox. In mathematics, it's possible to take a solid sphere, cut it into a finite number of pieces, and reassemble those pieces into two identical copies of the original sphere. This seems to create matter from nothing, violating conservation laws. The paradox emerges from the unusual properties of infinite sets and non-measurable sets in three-dimensional space. As your mind stretches to comprehend how infinity allows for such impossible transformations, feel your thoughts expanding beyond the constraints of ordinary physical intuition. Parrondo's paradox. Two losing games, when played in alternation, can become a winning strategy. Imagine two biased coin-flipping games, each designed to make you lose money over time. Surprisingly, by switching between these games according to certain rules, you can generate consistent winnings. This counterintuitive result demonstrates how nonlinear systems can create value through oscillation between losing states. As you visualize this rhythmic alternation between loss and gain, allow your consciousness to gently rock between alertness and drowsiness, gradually settling into the peaceful rhythm of pre-sleep. Conclusion. As we complete our journey through these mind-bending paradoxes, notice how your thoughts have become quieter, how the contradictions have gently rocked your consciousness towards sleep. The greatest paradox may be how puzzling over these impossible questions has led your mind to the peaceful simplicity of rest. Good night, and may your dreams be paradoxically both profound and peaceful. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, please like and subscribe for more.